Are we on?
Yep. Yo, yo, yo. Well, the first issue of 2023. We're out this month with Dave Levy. Now, Dave Levy is one of the nicest guys on the scene.
Got me landing net pole and I'm smashing all the ice, right?
Oh, we've got a live bite, Dave.
If you go around with a positive attitude to everything, you can only have good. And Ritchie Mcdonald said something years ago in his book, and I remember reading it. He said, if you're in tune with a lake, you know the difference between a goose jumping off the edge of the island and a fish rolling in the dark.
Yeah, earwigs. I eat spiders, I've eaten grasshoppers and snails and slugs. Slugs was by accident, by the way, but I've had snail on purpose. I shouldn't have done that, could have killed me.
I've always been a hunter of carp, and I'm never going to stop unless they make it illegal, and then I'll break the law.
Yeah, I don't think they come much better than that.
Yo, yo, yo. Well, the first issue of 2023. Hope you all had a fantastic Christmas and a lovely New Year, and you're not feeling too rough from all the festivities. We're out this month with Dave Levy. Now, Dave Levy is one of the nicest guys on the scene, an absolute gent, doesn't waste any time slagging other people off. He's got a wealth of experience, unbelievable amounts of knowledge, and albums and albums full of big carp. So we're joining him on the banks of Frimley. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Yeah, last winter, even though the water was quite shallow under these trees, a couple of times I came in here, freezing cold day, and there'd be 2 or 3 fish sat up. So what I tend to do is bait within the tree and out to the edge where I can get to, and just sort of try and lead them out. I've not seen anything in here today, but there has been a few fish out down this end in the last week, so it's a good chance for bite.
Happy with that one?
Yep. It was one of them, you know, and you catch the clip and then you feel it go in and under. That's 2 quite close together, but they're on quite a big set of snags with some lilies in them. There's loads of cover there.
What's going to be then, Dave? 2 on the tree line and 1 in open water?
Yeah, I'll go 2 on the tree line, and then what you can't see is out there in the summer, there's pads everywhere, loads of little round ones just dotted everywhere. So you have to have a couple of casts to make sure you're in the clear. But amongst all them pads is a lot of gravel. They're sort of growing on top of gravel strips, and there's like seams of silt between them. And the fish do love it out there. But obviously my banker rod is the tree line. It always is in most of the swims. But I always find that them open water spots, they tend to throw the bigger fish up.
Any particular preference for gravel or silt in here?
I always call the silt spots the gold spots, because there's so much gravel everywhere. Like every swim you cast out, you can find a nice big bit of gravel. So the first winter I done, which was last winter, I couldn't get a bite off of silt. I was catching off like the biggest, most blatant gravel spots I could. And then they silt-texed it in the spring or the end of the winter, and it seems to have just changed the way the fish have fed. They've definitely been on the silt. This winter I've had loads of bites out of silt, or say winter, this autumn, and where last year I couldn't get a bite out of the silt. So
that's interesting then.
Yeah, the silt-tex has obviously made it more attractive to them in some sort of way.
Because doesn't it sort of rejuvenate the silt or something?
It does, yeah. I did read it kills off natural food as well, but I don't know how true that is. I'm not a silt-tex expert.
Yeah.
I'll wrap that up and see what that little does. Basically what I found there was like a pocket of silt gravel, silt for about a rod length, and then it came back up onto gravel. So I've got 2. I know that underneath that bush is rock hard gravel. So I'm just not putting all my eggs in one basket. One in the silt, 2 on gravel on the tree line, and give it a good go. We'll have a go, see if we can catch one.
Morning, Dave. Nice to see you, mate.
Yeah, and you, mate.
The mecca that is Frimley. Lovely like this, isn't it?
Yeah, it's beautiful. You know what, Joe? I hadn't really seen it before I joined it last winter, but if I had to build a carp lake, you know, and think that's what I want, surrounded by silver birches, lily pads, gravel bars, islands, overhangs, you know, it's got everything you want to have on a carp lake, you know what I mean?
And loads of monster carp.
And a lot of good fish in here, yeah.
Unbelievable the stock these days, mate, isn't it? I mean, I think it's been a good 10 years, probably more than that actually, since I was last here, and yeah, it's come on leaps and bounds, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, probably I first heard about Frimley, and it was a good water for a £20 common. I mean, years ago, when I got the gold card one year, because it was the only way you'd get onto Sutton, and so I got the gold card, and I never even came to Frimley, because people went, oh, it's good for a £20 common. But at that time, the Sutton fish were doing £40, you know what I mean? And now, all these years later, bloody hell, over 20 years later, there's over 20 40s in here.
Wow.
Maybe 350s at the moment.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a mega lake.
And they're proper old ones as well, aren't they?
Yeah, so the average age of the carp in here is about 45 years old. And every single one of the 40s is 45 years old plus. And even probably a few of them are topping 50 years old now. A mega old carp, and yeah, it's probably got the best, I reckon, the best stock of old carp in the whole country.
It's not just big commons, is it? It's big, like,
No,
big
not
head
at
of
all.
big mirrors in here as well.
When I joined, I think I was telling you earlier, Joe, I joined knowing there was at least 2 or 3 commons that were upper 40s, maybe scraping 50. And I walked round and I said to Mark, who owns it, like, is there any £30 mirrors? And he said, £30 mirrors? He said, there's nine £40 mirrors. I was like, I couldn't believe it. And yeah, you've got fish like, there's 4 different fully scaled in here, over £40.
Wow.
The biggest one of them's about 44. Then there's one called the Big Plated, which is like 47. And there's a fish called Cashew, it's got all tiny little scales down its lateral line. It's like probably about £46 at the moment. Like unbelievable carp, you know what I mean? Put them anywhere else on their own, they'd be a target fish, let alone all together, you know? I got the ticket in October last year, so I've sort of had a full year on here. And yeah, I sort of hit the ground running really, turned up, had a few fish on my first session. But I just knew I had to make hay while the sun shined, because I got the ticket the last week of October, and things were only going to get progressively harder as the winter went through, you know, and it did. Like January, I don't think the lake did a bite. Do you
Just
know what I
shut
mean?
up shop.
Yeah, just shut up shop. But
So I mean, you're pretty hardcore when it comes to winter fishing, aren't you? You fish throughout.
yeah, you'll remember when you was a kid, Joe, and you used to come over Snake Pit to check if I was still alive. Yeah, I fished right through, to be fair. At one point, they did empty Lake 2 into here because they were doing a netting on it, and it seemed to kill it a bit. So I left it for a month, and I went over to some of the Essex Club walks for a month, then come back, and I had a few blanks. I had about 5 or 6 nights over without a fish, and then I started catching a few on zigs. They were just all in the upper layers, like. You always know when everyone's fishing zigs, and quite a few of the lads were, I always think it's a really good opportunity to get the fish on your bait because no one's putting any in.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So at that point, I was using a lot of crumb, which is obviously, I think they'll eat crumb at any time of the year, a bit like they will maggot, as long as it's digestible. So I use that opportunity to sort of establish a bait, and that's really paid off for me through the year, and I've had like a really good season on here.
It's amazing, isn't it, with crumb? I mentioned it earlier. The snags in Snake Pit, obviously you could feed them whatever you wanted in them. 2 or 3 boilies into crumb chucked in the edge, and now there'd be 2 fish like troughing on that for a long period.
Yeah.
So I guess it just holds them on that spot
does,
longer,
yeah. You think
keeps them coming back.
Look at the natural foods they're feeding on, like bloodworm and small like food items, snails, and they have to trough around to get them, you know what I mean? So like when you crumb your boilies up, you're almost mimicking something natural in the bottom rather than it's a solid boilie just to pick up and swim off with. And I always think like, I see guys putting like a couple of kilo of a catapult sometimes in the winter, and I think, what are you doing, mate? It's been there ages, you know what I mean? Where a couple of kilo of boilie is a lot. A kilo of, or a couple of kilo of crumb is very different. You know what I mean? You're giving them something they can actually digest. Roach can eat, everything can eat it, so you're causing a lot more feeding on an area than just a boilie, you know.
Definitely. And I suppose also it's like, there's a lot of lakes these days where they've had so much pressure and they've seen so many boilies. It's actually, boilies seem to put them on edge, don't they? You know, and they won't pick them up in the edge. You know, it might be different out in the pond, or might wait a couple of days or whatever. But they definitely, on some lakes at certain times of year, they go off round weights, don't they?
Yeah,
but
100%.
like you said, it's not the makeup of the boilie. It's just the sort of the appearance and the shape of it that's sort of what putting them on edge. But you turn it into a smaller bait and crumb and that, and they respond to it completely differently, don't they?
And they're so used to picking up boilies. It's like, if you want to get excellent at something, keep doing it. And that carp is picking up boilies continuously, so when it gets one with a rig on it, it's bloody excellent at getting rid of it, you know what I mean? Especially on gravel spots and things like that. So I think when you give them crumb and lots of different food item sizes, the food's going in and out, and they're trying to sort of control what's going down more, and they're not thinking about as much, oh, this is easy, you know what I mean? There's all different bits and pieces. It's definitely a more confusing feeding pattern for them.
And that's all year round you apply that to your fishing as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I use crumb, like, obviously sometimes in the summer when the roach are a bit of a pain and that, I might cut it out. But generally, especially if I go on a lake, and there is a lot of lakes now that are just carp, isn't there? If I go to a lake and they said, oh, we've never stocked a roach, you know, it's all crumb and broken baits. But if there's a lot of silverfish in here, there's a lot of bream and tench, not tons, but enough that they can be a nuisance. So in the summer, I sort of cut it down to a very little bit. I see a lot of people now are doing it. I would roll my baits in hemp oil, then roll them in the crumb.
Yeah. So
all the boilies are encrusted in the crumb. And then as the baits are getting picked up, even if you get cleared out, there's still bits and pieces all over the bottom with some attraction, you know?
Nice.
Plus the oil taking bits and pieces into the air. So you, rather than fish saying, think, oh, my bait's there on the bottom, you're creating a whole different feeding environment. You've got oil lifting bits and pieces up and down, and then you've got bits and pieces sinking into the bottom, and the boilies herself. Like,
I think that's what, I don't know whether you use it, but I think that's one of the reasons why that smart liquid's so good. Do you use that much?
Do you know what I have? And I've messed up with it a few times, because what I found, I used to sort of be at home, prep my bait in the garage, you know, get the crusher out, crush it up, put the smart liquid all over it, and I weren't doing that well on it, and I was thinking, you know, I thought this stuff would be really good. When you put it in a glass and you see how it reacts, and then I spoke to John Kneebone at Mainline, he said, no, you've got to put it on, cheers for that, mate. He said, you've got to put it on there and then. So, and it definitely made a difference. So what I was doing is bringing my crumb down, just as I'm about to spod, load of smart liquid over the top, because it reacts when it goes in. You don't want it thinning out on the bait. So then I started to get some real results on it.
You don't want it actually sort of soaking in.
You want it there to
what I was doing
create
is
the water column.
I'd get my fresh bag out of the freezer and then coat them, give them a good shake around, put them back in. But then before using them, I'd put some smart liquid on it as well. So it's basically the stuff that you coated it with the first time always sort of sets and hardens on the base, so that kind of gets to the bottom and then starts releasing. But the fresher stuff kind of gets in that water column instantly, you know. But yeah, definitely there's something, you know, in that seems to pull fish in on the toe of the flow.
Know that
scent trail.
Goo really opened people's eyes up to liquids, didn't it? And there's much better liquids about than goo. Like, I won't put goo over, and I'm not putting it down. I use goo on quite a lot of pop-ups. I find it brilliant on pop-ups. I hate it over my bait. I've not done well with it over bait, you know. But I tend to use more natural liquids like the hemp oil, the smart liquid, which is more of a food thing as opposed to an attractor, you know what I mean?
There's something in it that they taste, and they like the taste, they like the scent. I suppose the goo is more of a scent thing than a taste thing.
Yeah, it's almost like a high attract liquid, you know what I mean? It's like chucking out a high attract liquid. That's the way I see the goo. So yeah.
Like you say, they all have their place, don't they?
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
All right, so obviously we're moving into winter now, aren't we? There's quite a few leaves still on the tree, but I'd say we've started winter, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Well, officially, it's something like the 21st of December.
Oh, is it? Okay, right.
Yeah,
well, tomorrow night it's going to be -4, so I reckon
that's what I'll
winter.
say. I'll say when there's a bit of frost on the ground, it's winter, you know.
So with that in mind, I mean, what sort of, you've obviously, you know, we haven't touched on that yet, but in fact, let's just rewind a couple of weeks, and you had a pretty particularly epic session on here, didn't you?
Yeah, I did, yeah. So the fish, I've had a really good year, caught some of the fish that, not that I didn't join the catch, I didn't even know were here, like the big fully scaled. I've had 3 of the big fully scaleds out, but the main target was Charlie's mate, it's the biggest carp in the lake. And you know, wherever you go, Joe, you want to catch the biggest carp in the lake. That's how we are, you know what I mean? And yeah, I got really close a few times, you know what I mean? Like left a swim and it come out and things like that. And then the other week I got down, fished a swim called the single boards, and yeah, second morning, got the bite, had it, £56.10.
There you go.
So yeah, it's always nice, you know, and it's the one you want, and you see it come up, and you're like, you literally shit yourself, didn't you? Your legs, oh my God, it's it, you know what I mean? And I've got my GoPro on when I've done my blog, and I ain't put it out yet, and I forgot it's on, and I'm going, is that it? It's fucking it, it's it! You know what I mean? Like, because you get so excited, don't you? You know what I mean? Yeah, it's wicked.
That's great when you can capture them moments.
Yeah, yeah.
The pure rawness of the excitement.
Like,
and
when I
buzz.
joined, I thought, oh, it'd be lovely to catch a 50. I've never had a £50 common, and I knew there was a good 2. There's 2 in here that are £50 like, and she was doing like 52, 53. So through the year, she's just got bigger and bigger, like, and my biggest mirror was £56. I never thought I'd get an all-over PB, you know what I mean? So when I caught her, she smashed me PB as well. So,
mega.
Yeah, it was just, I was yeah, well chuffed, mate. Went home, whole bottle of wine. Yeah, but I'm still back. The ticket runs till April. So it's quite an expensive ticket, so it's a shame to waste it. And there's loads I ain't caught, you know what I mean? But I will definitely fish it till April and hopefully bump into a couple of others before it ends.
So how did you catch that one? Are similar tactics to what you're using today? Is it, or do you tend to use similar tactics throughout the year?
No, I do chop and change, like, you know, especially like the zig time, you know, when it's freezing. I'll let this train go by if you want. It's taking the piss.
Oh, it's a slow one as well. Look.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so like early spring, when the fish were up in them layers, I was on zigs. And then like I say, as it warmed up, I'd been pre-baiting with crumb anyway. But as it's warming up, I start to have bigger food items, you know what I mean? And the items get bigger and bigger the warmer it gets. In the end, I'm just putting in pure boilies. So the bait-wise, it changes, but tactically, I'm fishing blowback rigs. Sometimes I've got a helicopter on if I'm fishing deep silt. Other times I've got a leg clip on. If I'm fishing a hard bottom, I'm putting a leg clip on, because I don't like the movement between the bead and the helicopter system. You know, if these fish have been fished for over 40 years, they know what a rig is, and I want instant hooking capabilities, no slack in it. So if I'm fishing hard bottom, I'm straight onto a leg clip. So that was sort of my only changes, really. A few of the fish I had on Ronnie rigs, I do love a Ronnie rig, like, but a lot of the time, because the Ronnie rig, I like to fish it on quite a fine wire hook, which is like a medium curve. And if there's a lot of lilies about, you know, you can't risk it. So I was on a size 4 beak point, fishing against lilies and things like that, because I knew that's got the power to land the fish. And I ended up with 53 bites and 51 fish. So like, hardly had a hook pull, and I think that's it's testament to the tackle I was using, but these are hard-mouthed fish. Like, you don't often hear hook pulls on here.
Right.
So I think because they've got all that gravel to go round, they've had years of feeding on that gravel, they've got proper tough mouths on them, you know what I mean? So yeah, which does help. Because other waters you go to, I was fishing a water the other week, and you land 50% of the fish, because the fish are only 6 years old.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're soft-mouthed, and you play and they just pop off because they're soft-mouthed. But on here, they've been here some for 50 years. The mouths are granite, you know?
That's always nice to know.
Yeah, yeah. You can pull on them.
That's bloody good odds though, mate.
Yeah, I was well pleased with that.
And an epic personal best.
Yeah, wicked, mate, yeah.
Lovely.
Probably one of my best seasons, like, for about 4 or 5 years, you know what I mean? Yeah, I've had a really good season.
Well, not just here, but where, you know, you've had some epic results elsewhere as well.
Yeah, I've been abroad a bit this year. I'd started the year, I went to, everyone's mad on public fishing in France now, aren't they? But I've been doing a new series with Ridge Monkey called A Tale of Carp. And I went out to the river lot and on a boat. And it's the first time in my carp fishing I actually thought, I'm out of my fucking depth here. You know what I mean? I was driving down this river. This river's like 150, 200 yards wide, trees in everywhere, looked good for a carp. You know, there was trees down everywhere. We drove for 5 hours and saw one angler. You know what I mean? And the guy we had to hire the boat off, he said, like, you know, if you catch 2 carp this week, you'll do well.
Right.
And he said, if you hook 4, you'll land 2. He said, 'cause the snags in the river are savage. And the first lock we got to, no one had been through it in weeks. There was fully grown trees, right, laid in this lock on their sides. And I was like, never even been through a lock, you know what I mean? And we're getting ropes on the boat and just pulling them out of the lock, like. And yeah, eventually I found an old lock. They said it was about 100 years old and it hadn't been used in years. It's all like started to fall away into the river. And I don't know a lot about it. I've not done a lot of river fishing, and that was the idea. I wanted to put myself outside my comfort zone, you know what I mean? And I set up in the lee of the water because I knew that water was dead and out of the flow. And long story short, ended up with 11 fish.
Wow.
Yeah, I lost one. The first one I hooked, I ain't been snapped up since I was a kid. You know what I mean? Like, because you go, oh, I weren't even ready for it, Joe. This thing, I just stood there with the rod like, what the fuck just happened? His finger was split, like £40 braid, his fish just battered me and just cut me off on something. I was like, that £60 like fluoro, it just gone. Like, and I thought, right, next one, I'm not going to try and have a war with it, because this couple of lads said, if you hook one, you got to go to war. So I hooked the next one and I thought, I'll just play it, and I did, and the fights were savage, but I landed the next 11. You know what I mean? Which were just over £40, but
wow.
they was quite a few 30s, but the fish were savage. I'm definitely going back. It was brilliant, you know. It's spectacular, Joe. Like in the mornings, the last place we plotted up was in a town, and there was all these like houses up this sort of side of a cliff face, and a big overflow, and there was all steam coming. It was just, honestly, mate, like one of the nicest. I was sitting on the back of his boat thinking, this is fucking unreal, man. Like, yeah. But from there, I came back here, done a bit of fishing, and then I went out to the French Alps and fished the public water in the French Alps, which was, you know, people swimming all over you all day. I've got a drone up, I'm playing this fish, and some guy's just swimming past me, you know, one of them orange things, like he's out of Baywatch, you know, you played it, all right, mate. Like, yeah, so I went there, and then after there,
down there, isn't it?
Oh, mate,
I love that.
I'm going to spend a lot of time there in the next few years. I love it there.
Can't wait to get back down there.
Yeah, and then I went to obviously Euro Aqua on a bit of short notice, really. I got offered a trip from Paul at Ridge Monkey, and bit his hand off, you know what I mean? Went out there thinking, my PB's been £88, my European PB, which is a good PB, massive. 40 kilo, for about 4 years. And I thought there's a good chance I'll beat that. On the second day I had a 93. So that was my week done,
That's
you know?
Just ridiculous.
Yeah, you think, oh, that's my week done, I'm happy, you know what I mean? And then on the 4th day at 101, which just blew me up. I mean, my head was gone. I was looking at this fish like, what is that about? You know,
how do you even pick something like that up?
Mate, do you know the maddest bit that shocked me the most? The fight. As I was playing it, it just kept dumping itself on the bottom. You know, like normally you play a carp and it would go, no, bang, just dump itself there. And I'd think, it's snagged, you know. I kept thinking, oh, it's snagged, this fish is... And I'd pull it and it'd go, just creak up off the bottom, then start swimming again. And Paul, as we're filming it, Paul's got his phone out. He went, oh, because I was trying to do a blog, and he went, I'll film it in the net. And I said, get in the net, get rid of the phone. Like, yeah, and it went in, and I was like, Jesus, that's huge. And now again, I think, oh, that's a brilliant. Then 2 days after that, I had a PB common, £97, which was probably the best fish of the trip. Like, totally in proportion, massive long carp, but weirdly didn't actually fight that hard, coming a bit like a dog on a lead. But yeah, ended up with 5 in the end, over £85.
That is absolutely
loads of 60s.
Unbelievable.
I never caught a 70, so I asked for my money back, but I weren't.
Oh, brilliant. Well, yeah, mate, absolutely stupendous trip. And then since you got back, obviously you had the big one out of here. And
Yep.
Haven't you been nominated as one of the Carp Anglers of the Year? Or?
Yeah, the Angling Times phoned me up and said, you're in the running for Carp Angler of the Year, which I didn't even know, so that was nice. And just yesterday, by the time this comes out, they phoned me up and said, yeah, you've won it. So I won Carp Angler of the Year 2022.
There you go.
Yeah, which I'm pleased about. What
you getting for that, Dave?
I think you get an A4 certificate.
I thought it used to be 10 grand.
Yeah, I think it was 10 grand, and then it went down to 5. But with the economy the way it is, now you get an A4 certificate. But it's the thing of being crowned Carp Angler of the Year, and I was pleased to get it. Though, like, I think it was 2012. I won the mainline one, which is obviously just mainline bait. So to win the Angling Times one, when you know everyone's involved, it's a nice,
that's epic, man.
A nice ego boost, you know what I mean?
But, you know, rightly deserved as well with a year like
thanks,
that, mate. So, yeah, epic. Right, I managed to knock me coffee over before we started this, so...
you want another one, didn't you?
Yeah, that's all right.
I'll get it on.
I was enjoying that. And then, we'll pick your brains on something else.
I think you can see I'm sitting near the camera though, so it won't look so midgetised.
It feels right, doesn't it? Feels make change.
I've got my big jumper on. You know, the first guy that ever auditioned for Superman, he thought I'm too skinny to get this job, so he wore this big woolly jumper and they thought he was massive. So that's why I wear this, basically. Bailiff's never asked me for a ticket when I got this on.
Not exactly small though, mate. You still into the old gym and all that?
Yeah, 3-4 times a week.
Really?
Yeah, still go, mate, all the time, yeah.
Fair play.
Trained yesterday for about an hour and a half.
Do you think that has like real sort of positive impact on your mental health as well as your...
Oh, massively. My daughter's a PT purely for fitness and mental health. That's her job.
Wow.
And there's so much related that when you exercise, your body releases endorphins, makes you feel better. And like you as you get older as well, doing like lifting heavy weights strengthens your bones, makes you stronger.
Well, they say like
better posture, everything, you know.
Don't you lose a percentage of your muscles?
Yeah, well, you've got to remember,
you're
like,
not doing anything.
we're all dying, aren't we? Just at a different rate. So you just got to stay in the best condition you can. So yeah, I think the more weights you can do at a later age, the better.
Right, I need to put my finger out, mate, don't I?
Yeah, well, when I was younger, for me, I've run marathons and boxed and all that. As I've got older, I've just got more into like circuits and heavy weights. And I used to, if I come out of the gym and I weren't sweating, drenched, as far as I was concerned, I hadn't trained. Now, if I come out of the gym with a sweat on, you know what I mean? It's rare, you know what I mean? I'll go in there and lift heavy weights.
Right.
So, and eat better. And just look after myself in general. You're not guaranteed anything, but you want to be, it's like keeping a car in good condition, it's going to do more for you. And that's what your body is, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, you know, I can see you're a very positive person, aren't you?
Yeah, 100%, mate. Yeah, all the time.
Which is, you know, it's a great trait to have, isn't it? And I think it can bring you, you know, kind of good results in life, can't it?
If you go around with a positive attitude to everything, you can only have good. You know what I mean? Like, even the worst day's a lesson. I've learned something today, now I've took a positive thing from it, and I think you just breed things, good things to happen to you. If you go round, and I've got mates, you know what I mean, they go, I could have done this if I'd got the break. You've got to make it all yourself, you know what I mean? The right attitude to give you the right movements. When you're in tune with a lake, Joe, that's when you know you're at your best, like, and you know everything that's going on. And Ritchie Mcdonald said something years ago in his book, and I remember reading it. He said, if you're in tune with a lake, you know the difference between a goose jumping off the edge of the island and a fish rolling in the dark. And you do. You go, that was a fish. I know I had a fish roll in this lake. They're not these ones. They're them ones that just turn over like they are in here, you know what I mean? And they've all got their own little things, and the more you're in tune with it, the more the lake speaks to you, you know what I mean? It sounds a bit spiritual, and it is. Like, the more you're connected with the lake, the better things are going to be.
You can apply that to life as well, can't you? Like the signs that you get, if you follow the little signs and you believe in that, then you get more of them. And you know, it's almost like there's guidance there that's available if you've got the right mindset.
yeah, just like be positive about everything. You know what I mean? So.
Right. Well, we mentioned earlier that you've always fished throughout your winters. So seeing as this is going to be like the January issue, thought we'd focus a little bit on sort of winter tactics and sort of some of the good results you've had over the years. And you did mention about zigs earlier. I remember years ago when you were fishing the top lake, you had a real good hit of fishing the winter on zigs, didn't you? I
did. When I fished Clevedley Top Lake, which is now
Ashbury
Fisheries, yeah. It was basically, that top lake was like 18 foot deep, and the bites always used to dry up mid-October, and there was no weed, because you know sometimes on weedy lakes they definitely tuck themselves in the weed and it's nice and comfortable, so I knew they had to be mid-water. So I thought I'll just start fishing zigs on one rod, and in the end it was 13 foot where I found them. I ended up being all 3 rods at 13 foot, and I was almost guaranteed a bite, sometimes 2 or 3 a night. And bear in mind, there was less than 60 fish, there was more like 50. And other than the bigger, and I think I caught them all. Wow. You know what I mean? In two winters, because at that time I was still working at the refinery, I'm doing a night a week. And 2 winters I had everything but the big one. You know what I mean? Like all on zigs.
And the same conditions, the same depth?
Yeah, literally 13 foot.
So
and
you don't think like the pressure or the temperatures had any sort of real bearings on that?
Do you know what? It was one of them. A couple of times I moved rods up and down, thinking I wonder if they've gone lower. But I caught them at 13 foot. But funnily enough, a few years later, a friend of mine had gone on there, and I said 13 foot zigs, and it was January, and he went, I can only get them on 6s. Yeah, maybe it's because, like that confidence thing. All 3 at 13, it's everything, all eggs in the basket, and there was always a couple of fish. But the maddest one I was there one night, and it was freezing cold, right? And I've got in my bivvy, and the bites would always come after midnight, before 6 in the morning, so it was always dark. Bit of black foam, 18 foot of water, I don't know how, you know what I mean? And I remember getting this bite, and I thought, that's a zig bite, you know, it's dropping back. Jumped out, picked up this rod, and I thought, something's going on in here. Switched my headlight on, lake's completely iced over.
No way.
And I was like, I've quickly put the rod tip under, put the clutch on, I've got my landing net pole, and I'm smashing all the ice, right? So I think, try and get this fish through the ice, like. Now, I played this fish in, it's really awkward, got it in the net. I'm like, oh, brilliant, a fish from under the ice, like. I'm freezing by this point. So in them days, I used to sleep in a set of boxers and a t-shirt. I've learned my lesson. Got in, put the cooker on, I'm over it like that. The other rod goes, so 2, and I remember they were 28 and 29.
Wow.
So under the ice, January, freezing cold conditions, and I thought, the amount of time we spend with baits on the bottom, nowhere near them, and it's like when you go to a pond, it's very rare fish are sat on the bottom. Although, back to the weed situation, I had a friend who keeps koi, and he'd been away in the winter, and he'd come back and he thought his koi had been nicked. He looked in his pond, there's not a koi in sight, but on one side he had a load of that siltweed. I think he had 12 koi, every single one of them was on its side in the siltweed like it was a cover.
Just buried in
Yeah, just buried, and he said I lifted them up and they were all just laying there. And that sort of, I thought, a lot of weedy lakes fish rubbish in the winter, and it's got to be because of that, because they're almost like in that pre-hibernation way of life where they're surviving on body fats and not food. Where if they're up in them upper layers, I think sometimes they're literally just sitting there breathing. You know what I mean? It goes zoom and it goes in. But obviously there is still natural food about, water beetles and things like that.
Of course.
So
I think it's the same with like reed beds, isn't it? I imagine they just kind of almost just wedge themselves in there, so they haven't got to do anything. Because if obviously, like you say, if they're not moving, they haven't got to
it's a
eat
blanket.
as much. They're
Yeah,
not
it's a
burning
blanket.
off any energy, are they? You know, they can just, if they want to just
Well, it's
sit
funny,
up.
last winter I was on here and it was fishing really slow. Hadn't been a fish out all week, and I was sitting there one night and I'm trying to listen for fish, right? It's like 9:30 at night, freezing cold, and there's a shallow bar area, and I'm looking and I can see roach, you know, when the pike chased them, and they keep going like this, and I thought, yeah, there's quite like, a few roach there, like, thing quite big. And I thought, turn the old head torch on to bright beam. In this beam, this dorsal fin just goes donk, donk, like that, donk. There's about 10 carp there, right? And they're sitting on the surface.
Wow.
It's minuses, everything's white, right? And I thought, this is ridiculous, right? So I got the plumbing rod out, cast it way to the side. Thought I need to know roughly, because they're off the back of this bar, what they're in. And it was 9 foot and a few inches. So I'd done an 8.5 foot zig, flicked it out there, and I thought, I'm going to be in their face. Went to put it, it was gone in my hand. I had a 22, got that back in, put it back out there again. It went at a 39-12 common.
Wow.
And then nothing after that. Oh.
Is it? We've got a live bite, Dave. It looks like it, doesn't it?
Could
No
have,
bird.
yeah. No, I felt it bump off it. That was between me and the thing.
I reckon it was a trailer or something.
Yeah, it's a fish. I felt it go over it.
Blimey, I thought we were actually going to bite
Yeah,
it.
yeah. You know, and you feel it go, don't come off, and then like, shows her in the area though.
Yeah.
It's a good sign. Positive thinking and all that.
Yeah, we've seen a little bit of bubbling and a bit of movement out there, haven't we?
Yeah, it's definitely a good chance for bite.
Right, we'll be back. It's nice that the old sun's out, isn't it?
Oh mate, it's lovely.
Makes all the difference this time of year, doesn't it?
I think that's why we're going to get a few cold nights, because it's obviously going to go clear. Snagged up already.
Right, so yeah, we've covered the zigs then, obviously, well worth taking note. Any other particular, what would you say would be your favourite kind of winter campaign over the years?
Favourite? I've had a few, a few that have stuck in your mind who I've done really well. One was Walthamstow. I hadn't been back to Walthamstow in about 4 years, and I fancied doing a winter, so I just went back to the 2 and 3. And it was going through a stage where it was almost like a forgotten place. There was no one there.
How long ago was this then?
Oh, it must have been, mate, probably 10 or 15 years. I'd fished, probably 12 years ago, something like that, let's say.
Yeah.
I'd have to look back in my diaries, you know what I mean?
Oh, did it?
Yeah, but I went back, it's been nearly 40 years now, Joe, you know what I mean? So anyway, I've gone back there and it was empty, so I baited the 2 and 3. And quite heavy for winter, you know what I mean? I ended up doing 11 days, because at that time I was still working on the refinery. So I was doing every Thursday. Sometimes it's sort of a 60-mile round trip for me. I'd go up there and bait up on a Tuesday. But I just kept this bait going in. In 11 days I had 28 fish, which is good going on there. Still never had that poxy common, but had loads of nice mirrors and things like that, you know what I mean? But
So would you say like bait is a massive key thing for you?
I think if you're going onto a venue for the winter, don't turn up in mid-November expecting to get them on a bait unless it's maggots. When I'm going to pick a winter venue, and sometimes I forsake a little bit of my autumn on the water I've been fishing all summer to start getting bait into my winter venue, because you've got to keep them feeding. Because at the point where they switch off, it's almost virtually impossible, I found, to switch them on. But if you can start feeding them early October, mid-October, keep it going nice and regular, once, twice a week if perfect. Not loads, we're talking you could be putting 30 boilies in the same spot.
Right.
Or you could be putting 2 kilo of crumb. Keep it nice and regular, and it's like, once they realise it's there and it's a regular food source, they keep coming. Like the quarry, when I fished there, Darryl had obviously fished loads on the quarry, and he said to me, whatever you do, don't bother fishing in winter. He went, because it's the worst. He said he'd had a 100-night blank on there, didn't he? So I was like, well, I mean, that year I got a hernia at work, and I got, because the place I used to work for was BPO, they were quite strict. So I was like, you're not allowed back for 3 months. And that was basically mid-October. And I had the quarry ticket. I thought, well, I'm just going to fish 2 nights every week. Like, I've never been able to do this before, so it's been 1 night. And I baited the quarry, and I caught them right up to 2 days before Christmas. And I think the only reason I stopped catching them was the lake iced over. And it was iced over for about 4 or 5 weeks. It was a proper harsh winter. But I caught them like the day before the lake iced over, I had 6. And I was so that day was such a cold day, right? And I'd been baiting, I forget the name of the swim now, but I mean, it was basically opposite the point, Stonies.
Right.
Yeah, I was in Stonies and I baited at 18 wraps, like consistently 2 to 3 times a week. I know we can't all do that, but I suddenly had this time on my hands. And this one day I've got down, there's a pike fisherman in it. And I thought, fuck's sake, like. So I went round on the point, and Chili had done his book that year, his first book. And I took a book with me. I thought, it's freezing cold. I'm just going to sit here, have a cup of tea for the day, read a book. I ended up with 6 fish. I couldn't believe it. And it was freezing. I was like, you know what I mean? And I kept it really quiet because all the syndicate had gone. I led the lake to myself. The only people I see was bike anglers. And I remember speaking to Craig, who was one of the members on there, and he said, oh, did you get anything through the winter? And I said, yeah, I had 31 fish. And he couldn't believe it. He was going, what? I said, yeah, 31 fish out there. And in that was like, you know, like quite a few nice known mirrors, you know what I mean? I never caught ray out there. I have a thing with commons. Never caught ray, but caught loads of the nice mirrors that were in there. And then
proper old then.
Yeah.
Weren't they? Yeah, most of them have gone now, aren't they?
Oh, there's none of them left now, but they were wicked carp, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah,
it just shows you, doesn't it? You know, putting that effort in and just keeping the regularity as well, isn't it?
Consistency, mate. Any time of the year, any water, your main key feature, and if it's made up of a percentage and it's 10%, 5% of it is consistency. Like being there nice and regular, you don't take your eye off the ball, being in touch, you know, being in the zone, like, and that's what I say, when you're in touch with the water, the more you're there, that's how it happens.
Definitely. The other thing I did want to have a quick chat with you about was, I think one of the last times we were out, you were actually still working in the real world, weren't you, on your one night a week or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Since then, you're sort of balls deep in the carp fishing trade now, aren't you?
Yeah.
How's that been for you? Has it been what you hoped for?
Well, it's one of them, like, and we talked about it earlier, Joe. I used to drive down the road to that refinery, right, and wish 12 hours of my life away. A lot of it is that, like, you go, I've got no choice. I've got a missus, I've got a kids, I've got a mortgage, you know what I mean? And I wrote the book, and then after the book, I started getting a few little job offers, but nothing that made me think, oh, I should go and work in fishing. Then I had the, will it ruin my fishing? And eventually I thought, you know, no risk, no reward. I just went for it, you know what I mean? Port Ridge Monkey offered me a job. I said yes, and I went there, and it's been the best move I've ever made in my life. You know what I mean? Because
Awesome.
now, if I want to fish 3 nights a week, I'll fish 3 nights a week. Most weeks I do 2 nights, and I do other admin stuff in between that, but most weeks I fish 2 nights, but I pick them nights. It makes a massive difference. And I used to look at some anglers, and not knowing, like, high profile anglers, right, and think, Christ, how's he catching like multiple 40s in a season? I'll tell you why, because when you get to pick and choose your time, it's actually reasonably easy. And I don't mean that as an insult to carp. I mean that when you're a working fella and you go, I've got Friday night, it's very different to me who goes, this week, oh, the moon phase is on Wednesday, Thursday, or the low pressure. Yeah, I pick and choose my time, and it's a massive advantage. And these guys that have been doing it 5 nights a week, I know why they got their names. You know what I mean? Because it's easy. You still have to work hard. Nothing comes easy.
The other thing is, I wrote about it recently, and when you spend a lot of time on the lake, you realise that there's spells where there's very little going on, you know, and you're really scratching for a bite. And then there's other spells where they just throw caution to the wind. But those little throw caution to the wind moments are very few and far between. Obviously, you might only get a few of them per year, might you? You know, handful on some of the big pits at least. And if you're there 3 or 4 nights a week, then you've got much more chance of being there during one of those periods.
Yeah, of course.
And, you know, I'd definitely put some of the bigger hits I've had over the last few years down to, you know, just having been lucky enough to be there at the times when the fish, you know, are well up for it. You know, it's like they're acting completely differently to how they normally would.
You've got to always have balance, haven't you, Joe? Like when Paul said to me, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be able to fish 48 hours a week. You know what I mean? I didn't say 5 nights. There comes a point that if you fish 6 nights a week, it's a clear you're going to have them. You know what I mean? So I want to maintain a level of skill, if you like. You know what I mean? So I do 48 hours a week. If they're really having it and I think it's on, I'll do 3 nights. You know what I mean? And then obviously I have trips away all year, so like I can't really take the piss out of the family too much.
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, like, you know, we're very much the same in that life's too short and there's not enough venues to fish, is there?
No.
And going on these adventures and to new waters and challenging yourself to these new kind of you know, whatever you're faced with is really good fun, isn't it? It's enjoyable, and it's.
You know what, Joe? I was a little bit naive to it because I joined Ridge Monkey. I'd been to France a couple of times with mates. Oh, let's all go France, get pissed all week, catch a few fish, the average French holiday.
Yeah.
And when they said, oh yeah, what we want you to do, we want you to like branch out, start fishing abroad. And I thought, I'm not really into this, you know what I mean? Until I went there. And then I see, like, when people go, oh, there's a bit of a hardcore scene. You've got different scenes, haven't you? In the UK, I'd like to think I entered a big fish scene, you know what I mean? I like to go fishing for big carp. When you get over there, you realise there's the same there, there's scenes, and it's about talking to people, finding out about different lakes in the whole of that, you know, France, Croatia, Hungary, all across Europe, massive carp. They've never seen an Englishman, you know what I mean? There's so much to go on out there, like, yeah, it's just opened my eyes. I enjoy the holiday venues and I enjoy the public venues. At the moment, it's a bit of a fashion to go, oh, I've had a public 60. Some of the public venues I've been fishing are the easiest lakes because give up you. What you get on a public venue where it ain't seeing much pressure, when I'm finding them, they're pretty easy to catch. Because, I think it's a bit of a trailer, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, they're pretty easy to catch because they're not seeing any pressure. But on some of the, like Euro Aqua, for instance, when I was fishing there like a few weeks back, I was getting a load of bitty takes that were resulting in nothing. I thought, I'm going to a running lead. I knew it was fish. I changed over to a running lead, they converted to bites.
Maybe.
Because these fish on the holiday venues, they get hammered week in, week out. They know how to deal with rigs. They're actually smarter than your public venue fish. But it is nice to go to the public venue and catch the one that no one's held for 2 years, you know what I mean? So they've both got their different things. And some people, they always put themselves into, I'd never go there. And I think, why would you say never? Why would you never experience something good? You know what I mean? So I'll go and do it all. So it's opened my mind, you know what I mean?
Excellent. Yeah, well, I'm glad you're enjoying it, and yeah, it hasn't put out the fire at all.
Mate, the fire's hotter and burning more than there's more fish I want to catch now than I've ever wanted to catch, and I've had thousands. You know what I mean? There's not enough time in life for me to fish all the lakes I want to fish.
Epic.
Yeah.
We're gonna have one tonight, then, mate.
I think we've got a good chance for bite, mate. It's doing fish. It's got really good winter form, this lake. And last winter, I did have a few blanks, but I'd say 8 times out of 10 I was getting bites. I did have a really good thing going last winter, where this year that a few people know where I had them and I'm not getting in there as much, you know what I mean? So that's the thing, you've always got to be one step ahead, haven't you?
That's right.
Yeah, if you're pre-baiting, always have another little backup area going. So,
Good tip.
Let's see what happens.
You cold, mate?
Yeah, it is. Bloody chilly morning, Joe.
It was a cold night as well, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, last night, the hot water bottle came out, and then about 1 in the morning, I reboiled the kettle and did it again because it was cold.
Did you hear anything in the night?
I did hear something. I think I said to you, Joe, about 10ish. I heard something out there, but a train was going past as well, so it was hard to work it out. But some ripples come in, so I got a feeling I was in the right area. The fish are here, but you know when you get them first few really cold nights and it puts them to ground, I think after a week or so they get used to that temperature, they get a bit back on the feed again, and it's all a process of elimination, isn't it? You have to be here to know what's going on, you know. I don't think there was anything out last night, where the night before it was a little bit warmer, it did a 37. So yeah, it looks like a blank, but well, it looks like a learning session, as they say.
There's quite a lot of condensation last night as well. I always find them still nights where it's really damp and never particularly productive, are they? It can be a bit hit and miss.
You lay there breathing, didn't you? The top of your bivvy just ends up covered in mildew and water, if you like, and then drips on you, and it's just crap. Winter fishing's crap, but the fish look amazing, so we do it.
So yeah, I mean, obviously it's meant to get super cold tonight and at -3 or -4 or something, but looks like it's going to brighten up a little bit for today, so hopefully that might get them moving about a little bit, eh?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I've never had many days, well, up to about 11. After about 11 in the morning, it's just like, I ain't really had it, even in the summer. It just seemed to be no good, yeah. Had the occasional bite when I've been fishing places you'd expect a day bite, like against pads and things where they're heading. But generally, yeah, up until about 11 is pretty good, and then it's, you're waiting again for the evening. And because this is like sort of 100 mile from where I live, it's great if you're local, you just go. But a lot of days I would go for about 4 or 5 mile walk, because there's like 4 other lakes here, so I'd go and walk all the way around the lakes, bait to swim, rest the spot, you know what I mean, and then come back and get the rods back out. Some days, I obviously just kept them in to see if they were there, but never many day bites.
Right. Oh, well, we've got a few more things to pick your brains on today, so we'll have a cup of tea and then have another chat, shall we?
Sounds good to me, mate.
Well, obviously, you know, to come out for one quick overnighter and expect a big one was asking a lot. But what I knew is that it didn't really matter because A, you caught tons of big fish this year, and B, because you've been fishing so long, I knew that I could pull some information out of you that's going to help people catch fish.
Yeah.
I say the first time, well, I don't know if I mentioned it already actually on camera or was off camera, but first time I met you, I was bunking off school, wasn't I?
Yeah.
Over at Snake Pit.
I reckon you must have been about 13, 14 years old, Joe. And I remember you come round and it was freezing cold. And you come round and all you had on was like a proper school blazer and all that. You're right, mate, you had anything like that? And then for the rest of the winter, I think you came round and saw us pretty regularly. It was only, I think, me and Terry that fished it. It was empty all winter, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when Dippy was in there.
It was rock hard in them days, and well, it's always been a hard winter water, but yeah, it's just one of them pits. That the only year actually I've seen that fish well in the winter was the year there was an otter on there.
Really?
Yeah, and people getting them on single hook baits, and I imagine it was just like because that otter kept them moving.
Yeah.
They couldn't sit up and hold up in these weed beds or snags or whatever. They had to keep on the move. So if they're on the move, they're burning off energy, aren't they?
That was one of them waters, you know, as you do carp fishing, you learn a lot of lessons. I learned a lot of lessons on Snake Pit, and that's don't fish weedy waters in the winter, because very often they're rubbish, you know.
Yeah, I can remember actually fishing one session, and my memory surprises me sometimes, but I was like, I showed you the rig I was using. I was using one of them extending rigs, you know.
Right, okay, yeah, with the two knots slipping it.
Yeah, that's it. We used to have like a ring that would sort of, you'd PVA that, it'd be doubled over, but it would kind of create, you know, zero resistance, so they could kind of pick up, move off, and then hook themselves.
Yeah, you like do two rings, can't you, and eight each other.
That's it. I mean, it's not really a rig that ever really, I mean, it definitely used to catch us fish, and for some reason we seem to catch better ones with that rig out of layer, you know, more 20 pounders, and same with the snowmen as well. But if I'm thinking back now, relating that to something you said yesterday, and we touched on running leads.
Yeah.
And, you know, you said at Euro Aqua it made all the difference for you. And I mean, it's just that, it's quite obvious when you think about it, isn't it? But
yeah, especially, you know, when you fish lakes, Joe, that are really high pressured waters, like day tickets. And I told you a story yesterday, I was at a day ticket and we were sat there, it was the winter, and twice my right hand rod bobbing just cracked the rod and went down. And I said to my mate, I'm changing to a running lead, and I put an inline running lead on, ended up with 5 fish, all on that rod. And they definitely, you see it, if you've watched the underwater videos, they use the weight of the lead to...
It's unbelievable how they manage to do it, really, isn't it? You know, they literally tighten up, shake their heads, they must suck and blow as they're shaking, and...
Yeah, just get rid of the tip of the hook.
Out it goes.
You think, if you do something enough, you get good at it, and that's their mouth is their hands, isn't it? So they get very good adapts at picking stuff up, sorting stuff out with their mouth. It's weird, it's like I've known it before as well. There was a big fish on one lake I was fishing, and it was like, I'm not joking, at one point it didn't get caught in 9 years, and it got caught and got some mouth damage in a lot of weed. It come out twice, 3 times a year after that, every year. Because it had mouth damage. I don't know if it's like scar tissue on your fingers, they're less sensitive.
Well, I used to say the same about Dippy, you know, because that got caught a lot when it was young.
Yeah.
And then used to get caught loads when it was older. And I just think, you know, that mouth's almost desensitised. But also, like you say, I mean, they rely so much on how they filtrate food, because like I say, that is their hands, and so if they've got a slit down here, then that filtration system isn't working in the same way, is it? They're not able to suck and blow in as much sort of precision.
Definitely, mate.
And with such sort of delicateness. And its pecks as well, you know, I think, you know, where it got caught so much when it was young, they were obviously not able to work in the same sort of way, and they were quite small for the size of it, and we used to joke, you just swim into the piles of bait. Like,
It's mad,
it still took me 150 nights or 120 nights to catch it, though.
Yeah, that's another thing, you know, like some people go, oh yeah, that one comes out all the time. I've fished for a few carp that are supposedly the worst word in the world, a mud carp. I call them friendly. I love a friendly 40, you know what I mean? Come quicker. But when you're actually fishing for it, it's not that easy. You know what I mean? You go, yeah, it came out 10 times last year. Yeah, but it's got like 20 anglers a week fishing for it and it slips up 10 times. It actually ain't that much, you know what I mean? So when they slip up once or twice, obviously, but yeah, them friendly fish, I always find them hard to catch. I often catch the ones that hardly ever come out and things like that, and find them friendly ones hard to catch.
Yeah, same. But going back to the running in leads thing, I used to use it religiously for most of my fishing, an inline running setup with enough resistance so that, you know, they'd feel the 3 ounces of weight on that on the impact of tightening up to it. Then they'd shake the heads and that would slide down the line. And what I loved about it was the indication. You know, you can't beat that setup for indication. Every inch that pulls out of that inline lead is getting an inch of movement back here, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you've got the kind of right sort of tension in the line, and you could still fish it with a sort of semi-slack line and still achieve that sort of presentation. So yeah, I was convinced that I used to catch more, and I'm a bit like you now actually. I tend to just use a lead clip with a peg in it, and then if I want to use a running setup, I just remove the peg.
Pull it out. Yeah. Go on to running lead straight away. Yeah.
But I think the other good thing about that is that obviously you're not dropping leads for the sake of it, are you?
No.
Lead clips sort of tend to drop them most of the time, don't they?
I think there will be a little bit of a change in this dropping leads thing. Everyone got a little bit obsessed with it. Obviously, tackle companies, it pays for them to say, yeah, drop the lead. I remember one tackle company, and they actually put an advert out that said £1 for a lead or a 30 pounder. It was years ago, like when leads were a quid. They're £2.50 now. But and like everyone believed it. It's like, yeah, you get the lead on, you got more chance of losing the fish. I don't particularly agree, you know what I mean? Obviously, no, I just don't agree. I think sometimes they fight less when they've got a lead on, but if you're fishing a weedy or snaggy situation, yeah, you need to get rid of the lead because you don't want that ripping you out the fish. But if I'm fishing a water where it's like not snaggy, ain't weedy, I'm not dropping my leads, you know what I mean? My leads only drop when they hit snags. So
We talked about it last night, didn't we? I mean, it's a bit worrying really, just how many leads there must be on these ridiculously busy lakes.
Yeah, well,
you know, like those bushes on Farlows or whatever that everyone's always casting to. There must be like getting on for thousands of leads down there, mustn't there? You know,
literally, mate. There's a swim on here, and before I even got on Frimley, I heard about the double board swim, and apparently, like people used to turn up, and if it weren't free, they'd go home. It was like that productive. I think since I've been on here in a year, I've been here, it's maybe done 4 or 5 fish all year. And I think it's probably done 20 fish compared to some other swims that might have done 50, you know what I mean? I think less than that actually, and they've come out the margin of it. The main spot that everyone used to fish, I would imagine, is smothered in leads, you know what I mean? And it's definitely, is that the reason the spot's blown? I don't know, but...
Well, I think when I worked for Corda years ago, their coating at the time was guaranteed for 15 years.
Right, okay.
But then what?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
You know, so what? Does that then break down in the silt over that time, and then it's releasing the lead into that area?
Yeah.
But like you say, if that is the case, which it potentially is, then that will kill the natural food in the area, won't it? Or you know, sort
it's
of
a toxin,
get them to move away from that area.
I think in Europe, I did hear a rumour, and it might have happened already, that places like Holland, Belgium and that were already lowering their lead limits to 1 ounce and 3/4. So, and we normally are a few years behind them in following suit. But there's a few different things out now. You know, you've got the stones, the glass, and things like that. But to get a lead, to get something to 3 ounces, the stones have to be like that. You know what I mean?
And then the alternative materials are so expensive, it just wouldn't be cost effective. And so I think we're going to get to the point where we're going to have to be keeping our leads on. You know?
I'll be very shocked within the next few years if you get fisheries that state no dropping leads, where they spin the other way round for years. You know what I mean? Like, you must drop your lead. It's going to be the other way. No dropping leads in my lake. You know what I mean? And it's definitely going to happen. And when people can't replace their leads, they're not going to want to drop them. So you're going to drop them in situations where you need to, which is how you should fish them anyway. Like I've seen videos before and people have commented, gone, oh, his lead didn't drop off, like it's a bad thing. You know what I mean? You don't want your lead dropping off. You don't want £2.50 dropping off every time you hook a fish that you've got no reason for the lead to even drop off in the first place. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Sod that.
Yeah, well, with the price of everything these days as well, it's just yeah, getting too expensive to do it, isn't it? Especially in a scenario where you're catching quite a few.
You need a system like Ridge Monkey done with the uni-clip where you can spin the arm round so the lead don't come off, but all that's keeping that lead on is a thin line of rubber. And if it was to snag, that thin line of rubber can tear, so the fish can then get away.
Right.
You're going to need systems. Everyone, Fox, Nash, Calder, they're going to be doing clips that give you an option, 100%. They're going to have to, you know what I mean? And they're going to lose lead sales. But morally, they'll be more correct than they are at the moment.
Yeah.
And that's not putting them down. We're just as a, you know what we like, everyone's trying to look after the environment now, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're all trying to do more, so let's do it.
That's why I can see barbless hooks becoming more of a thing in the future as well, you know, because from a fishery manager's point of view, it's just makes sense, doesn't it? You know, if someone gets a crack off, a cut off or anything, then it just gives that chance, that fish a much better chance.
Well, I'll sit on the fence with that one, Joe.
Yeah.
I know you were saying yesterday, I like a barbed hook, especially if I'm fishing somewhere that's proper granite. When I hook it, if it weeds me up, I don't want it slipping the hook. Do you know what I mean?
Well, there's that other thing, isn't there, as well, you know, is that when, you know, they do prick themselves and get rid of the hook quite often, don't they? But once it's past the barb, there's no way they're getting rid of it.
Yeah.
So, you know, you have got that in your head as well. But if I had my own fishery, I think I'd make it a rule.
I do think, I agree, but I agree to disagree. And I'll say this, like, we do everything we can to look after carp. We put them on mats. We put clinic on their cuts and things like to stop them infecting. We do as much as we can, but at the end of the day, we stick metal spikes in their faces. So we've got to stand, no moral foot to stand on. So
yeah, I know what you're saying,
know what I mean?
but at the same time, when you see a fish swimming around with a rig hanging out of his mouth, you know.
Yeah, it's not nice, but it's what we do. And someone goes, I get people that are non-fishermen go, does it hurt them? I go, probably. And I'm a hunter and I just accept it. I've always been a hunter of carp and I'm never going to stop unless they make it illegal, and then I'll break the law. So yeah. I just weren't here, man.
Last rod.
Last rod. And while we've got it in, let's have a little look at the rig I've been using down here this year. That's probably caught me 90% of my fish. And that is a blowback rig. The only difference in that is I always shrink tube the shank. That stops the rig getting unset in the water. Cut down my bait, make it waft. Then I've got about 8 inches of Camo X in 25 £. The Ridge Monkey uni lead clip, 4 foot of lead core, 18 pound fluorocast, so a mega strong setup, size 4 beak point as well, so anything I hook, I'm landing. Yeah, it's pretty basic.
And balancing your baits is something you've always done, isn't it, Dave?
Yeah, I've always balanced baits for years and years. I used to drill them out, now I basically cut the top off a pop-up, cut the top off my main hook bait and then just shave it down on the sides. But in the summer I don't bother shaving it down, I keep it whole. But this time of year you can make like a 15mm bait into a 12mm bait just by giving it a little cut down.
But yeah, nice, simple, strong, and obviously you've got a lot of confidence in it because you caught tons of massive carp on it.
Yep, it's all I use really, that and a Ronnie, 90% of the time. Let's get out of here, Joe.
Okay, last month I've done a little piece on this stuff known as ZR, which stands for Zero Rust. Now, if you saw the demo, you'll understand exactly what this product's for. But in the last month, what I've done is a little test just to see for myself, and I put 2 hooks in a glass and one with this applied to it, literally just applied it like a few seconds before and then dropped it in, and one without any of this applied, and the results were unbelievable, to be honest with you. I think it's about 3 weeks in now, and there's a huge lump of rust all around the point of the hook with no ZR on, and the one with the ZR on is absolutely rust free. Now obviously rust will weaken metal, so it's going to be weakening them points. So if you can keep them points in tip-top condition, then they're going to work a lot better for you. Now, for a straight standard hook, straight out of the pack, should I say, you don't need to apply this stuff because the hooks have got a coating on which will stop them rusting anyway. But when you're hand sharpening your hooks or you're using the Kamakuras, then if you apply this stuff, it will stop them rusting 100%. So a massive edge, and one that you should definitely have in your tackle box.
Are we on?
Yep.
Right, what's happened now, going back into the 1970s, and me and Johnny Walker used to fish together in the swim. And then one weekend I decided to fish where Vic Gillings was fishing, because he caught a couple of fish the weekend before. So I went round to the other side, which was called the Sands. And it was, you had to walk down this great big sand dune type thing and then get down to a nice big flat area. Well, on the top was a great big meadow. Anyway, this particular night I was round him across to the other side of the lake, in with Johnny Walker, the old man, having a cup of tea with him and Eileen. And all of a sudden you can see all these, boom, 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 all these lights coming all around this common area. I thought, bloody hell, they're above me swim. So I've run all the way back there. I got that same old knife out again, and I stuck that in the sand, and I sat down, not looking up. I was just sat down. And all of a sudden, I could hear these footprints in the sand. Whoosh, 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 and I thought, fucking hell. So the geezer's turned up behind me. I hadn't even looked at him. Is there any good, mate? I said, nah, not likely to either, while you lot are riding about on motorbikes up there. I didn't even look at him. Anyway, so we won't be there long. And then he walked away. Well, as he walked away, I thought, cool, man, Mountain Dean, I'm glad I didn't look at him. He was massive. And he said he was so polite as well. So I was just right, we'll be gone in a minute. And I thought, wow, how lucky was I? And unfortunately, he didn't see the great big blade that was stuck in the sand either. So they're the 2 probably worst points I've had in my life as regards to like frightening. I haven't been frightened of anything else, I don't think.
Brilliant. Apart from earwigs.
Yeah, do you want the earwigs? Do you want the earwigs?
Go roll
right, yeah, earwigs. I mean, I eat spiders, I eat grasshoppers and snails and slugs. Slugs was by accident, by the way, but I've had a snail on purpose. I shouldn't have done that, could have killed me. But I eat all manner of things. But one day I was sitting with the old man, Johnny Walker, and I flattened this earwig. I said, what, they bite? He said, no, they just give you a little nip. I said, why are they called earwigs then? I was only a young'un. He said, because at night they crawl into your ear and eat through into your brain. I said, really? And that's why I don't have any earwigs near me. And I'm still bothered about them today because of what he said. And I know they don't do that, but you never know, do you? To be fair, if one fell on your ear, it ain't going to walk our way out when there could be wax in there, there could be a bit of something else in there, and it might just start eating away and then just end up going out the other side. Especially in my head, because it goes straight through. Be like a... Yeah, I don't think they come much better than that.
Right, I don't know about you guys, but when I come to a lake that I like and I don't catch, it just drives me on to want one more, you know, it just fuels that desire. And I came up to the Twynehurst complex last winter for a couple of goes on Lake 3, which is the syndicate lake up here. There's some absolutely mega carp in this lake, and I had, well, say a good go. I had a little go at trying to catch them, you know, I had one session and I baited up and came back again and yeah, failed to get a result. However, all of this year, this place has been in the back of my mind and I've been itching to come back and have another little go. So it's now the beginning of November. I've got here about a month earlier than I did last year. I think that was just before Christmas, that sort of time, and it was very cold at the time. The fish weren't moving around much, but I did see a bit of activity, and that's kind of given me a little bit of information to go on with this session. I've had a wander around for the last hour or so, not seen any signs whatsoever. So I'm going to go into a swim which I saw the most activity in last year and go from there basically. I'll set some traps as stealthily as I can for tonight, minimal amounts of bait, and then keep an eye on the water this evening, probably get up in sort of the early hours and have a listen. Hopefully they're going to give themselves away and give me something to go on rather than just last year's information. There's not much clarity in the water at the moment, so yeah, you can't really see spots in the edge as such. I think it's going to be about seeing bubblers and seeing fish or hearing fish show in the night. So I haven't got long, I've got about 40 minutes until sunset. I need to find some spots, need to get some rigs out, probably need to tie some rigs. I must crack on. Let's get the show on the road. Yo, yo, yo. Oh, excuse the noisy road behind me. Not the most tranquil bit of fishing when you're 15 metres away from a busy road, but got to be where you think you need to be, and this is where I think I need to be. Got the rods out last night, but it's after dark by the time I got them out. Basically, out here to the left and straight out in front was an area last year that they seemed to like, you know, the bits of activity, the few small amounts of activity that I did see were in this vicinity. So I thought I'll just drop in here and keep an eye on the water basically. And as I was getting sorted last night, I thought I'd have a little lead around, just a little 1.5 ounce lead, you know, trying to be as gentle as possible. But there was quite a lot of weed about. However, I was given a sign, 2 big old fizz patches just out in line with that island, sort of about 30 yards out. So I let that die off, gave it half hour or so, and then had a little flick around there with the lead and found a lovely little drop. I had to pluck a little bit of weed out, but yeah, really nice drop in amongst quite a lot of weed, and a nice little smooth pullback as well. So that was one of them little gifts from the gods. Although it hasn't done anything yet, I feel like if there was one of my rods was going to go, then that'd probably be the one at the moment. I've just repositioned this right-hand one. I did have it to the right under a sort of overhang just before it goes into a bay where the aerator is. But I've been watching the odd little bit of bubbling coming up in one particular zone out here, and the old saying, innit, when you've got nothing, something is everything. So I've dropped one on that with a pole. Just a boilie on milk bait, like a little balanced one, and handful of maggots, a little bit of crumb, and like 2 whole boilies, you know, very little, but enough for a bite, and hopefully something might happen. One lumped out this morning, sort of about 10 yards past them geese, came out twice, good sort of upper 20, maybe a 30-pound common. And last night 2 fish showed out in this vicinity as well. One probably only a rod length or so away from that middle rod, and the other one just in the open water. So I do feel like I'm in the right zone. It is a tricky lake. They do react to pressure quite a lot. So yeah, I'll be having a go. I'll be keeping my eyes on the pond and keeping an eye down this left-hand margin as well, because that's meant to be quite a good area. The visibility is really bad. So not going to be like seeing them in the edge or being able to check on baited up spots, but I shall keep persevering for now and I'll keep you posted. Well, thankfully it's brightened up a bit and it's turned into a nice sunny day. I say sunny, it's not very sunny in my swim, fortunately, because of the trees around here. I'm pretty sheltered from the sunshine. Nothing to report, unfortunately. Well, I say nothing, that's a lie. I was speaking to Adam Penning on the phone earlier, and multiple times 5 or 6 bubbles would come up exactly on that rod where them bubbles come up yesterday, and all I've got on that is a solid bag, a little bit of ground bait, a few maggots, and then 2 little spoms over the top of chopped worms, the old dendrobinas from Willy Worms, and some white maggots. So not much bait, all natural sort of stuff. I feel pretty confident that if I can sit on this rod, there's going to be a chance. However, I've been baiting up the margins down to my left, and when I got here it looked really coloured, but I remember it did last year, and I'm pretty sure that for some reason after rain that corner gets coloured up. I don't know whether there's like a runoff from the road or something, but I might be wrong, and it might just be fish in there tearing it up. And I have had a little look at them spots this morning after baiting them last night, and there is the odd little bubble, like patch of bubbles coming up off of them. Not like proper fizzers, but you know, if I stand there and watch, there'll be like 3 or 4, ding, ding, ding. And then a couple of minutes later, another 3 or 4 a little bit further away. So it might actually be like nuisance fish, it might be roach. I think there might even be a few crayfish in here, I might be wrong on that. One of the rods I pulled in with maggots on was absolutely fine, so yeah, maybe not. But I know there are a lot of sort of roach in here. So yeah, potentially it might be them, but it might also be carp. So definitely going to keep an eye on that. I'm probably going to trickle a few more maggots and a little bit of hemp and that in there today. And then if I don't have anything here by tomorrow morning, move around there for the last 24 hours. Hopefully by that point, you know, if I've primed it up, then there might be a chance of a bite. But I do feel like that rod out there, you know, that was the sign given to me when I got here. I feel like if I sit on my hands, there's a good chance of a bite off of that spot. So for now, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Wow, the sun is beginning to drop. Oh, once them clocks turn. Really short these days, aren't they? Trying to make it happen on tricky lakes with such short daylight hours and such bad visibility. All the excuses. Well, I was just about to do a bit to camera to say it's gone really quiet out there. Where I was seeing that bit of bubbling on my bait earlier, and then a massive great patch of fizz came up just like yesterday when I was just getting set up. So hopefully it's bite o'clock. Like I said, I didn't put a lot of bait out there. Another 2 bubbles just come up, only a couple of small spoms, but obviously, you know, that's when you've got chopped worm and maggots, that's quite a lot of small items, and if they're falling in amongst a bit of weed around the spot, then you know, can sort of take them a little while to get through it, but felt like they were pretty accurate. So, and the spots, you know, probably 2 or 3 foot wide. I reckon it should be fine. I reckon it's just they're not feeding like intensely, so yeah, they're probably going to have to eat most of it before they hook themselves. Maybe it'll be a nighttime bite. State of my hair. Got to get a haircut this week, and I'm playing at Fabric on Saturday. Check me out. Absolutely buzzing about that. So yeah, we've got Thump 11th birthday at Fabric, which would have happened by the time this goes out. So obviously I can't invite you, but yeah, very exciting prospect, and yeah, momentous way to spend our 11th birthday. Go on the Kingfisher. Anyway, fingers crossed. I have moved one rod to the swim next door, There's a weed bed about 30 yards out, well 20 yards out actually, and I pulled a bait out to that because there was a few ripples coming from up there in the evening last night. So I think, yeah, there was a few fish down there, and that being the only weed bed in the area that's top to bottom, I imagine that's a bit of a magnet for them. So yeah, found a tidy little spot next to that, spoonful of bait, little solid bag. Pretty confident. Come on the big moon whacker. Well, as you can see, we've had a change of scenery. Not far from where I was, to be honest with you, but last night there was quite a few fish showing in this bay here where the aerator is. Like over 10 fish, I reckon. So there was obviously a few in there. So I've come around here where I can kind of pole one across to where the aerator is. And then also, it's probably the same fish, but one fish came out 3 times out of the middle out here. And it just sounded absolutely massive. Aside from that, obviously I saw one yesterday morning clattered out twice off the edge of that weed bed. So I've got one off of there, nice smooth area just off the side of it as it drops down into the deeper water. And then this rod here, straight out, again, a really nice smooth area in amongst weed, out in the sort of zone where I've been hearing a few show at night as well. So different angles, different spots. Yeah, I am trying. I wasn't even sure whether I was going to be doing 3 nights or not, but it feels a bit personal now. This is the 3rd time I've been up here, still haven't managed to get a bite. Yeah, it's obviously a tricky water. I could give you all the excuses. Oh, made me jump when that aerator just come on then. Yeah, I could give you all the excuses, but I just, yeah, it's this time of year. I always struggle at this time of year wherever I go. So that's my excuse. No, tonight is the night. Tomorrow's 11/11, which can be quite a significant number for me at times. Not always good luck, sometimes bad luck too. But we're going to go with the good luck, and we're going to catch one of the big uns out of here tomorrow morning. Probably about 6:30, 7 o'clock, I reckon, just before first light. Right hand rod, let's go. All right, mate, calm down with the strimmer. Jesus, you've been going 2 hours. Well, Twinehurst Pit 3 seems to be my nemesis. Last night, it was 2 shows in the bay before I went to sleep, so I thought, oh, there must be a chance, surely. One out in open water, big old. And then woke up this morning, nish. And I've been sitting here the last couple of hours, or 3 hours of daylight, and yeah, I've not seen anything other than one little bubbler. So, feeling like I've had a bit of a kick in really with this lake. I guess that is fishing at the end of the day. I just thought with this mild weather, lack of pressure, just thought, yeah, there'd be a chance. You know, there was a fair bit of activity the first couple of days, so don't know what to say really. Don't know what I would have done differently if I was to start the session again. But yeah, a bit disappointing. Normally I'd be going off with my tail in between my legs, sulking, but I'm not, because tomorrow night I'm playing at Fabric, so that is an absolute buzz and a half, as anyone who knows what that place is will understand. Probably the most renowned underground venue in the country. So yeah, very, very cool. But as for this place, well, it's got about 40 minutes to go. I'm going to give it till 11:30, just because it's 11:11 today, so I've got to at least see it through the 11:11 morning period, haven't I? But yeah, I've had, one single bleep on these 2 rods this morning, and that was it. Disappointing session. But there you go, that's fishing, isn't it? Unfortunately, we have to take the rough with the smooth. Just seems to be a lot more rough at this time of year. But there you go. Right, I'll sign off now, and unless anything happens, you ain't gonna hear any more from me. Ever again. Well, that's it for another month, I'm afraid. But before we go, a couple of little things. First up, it's the Essex Carp Show this month, an event that's well worth attending, probably the longest standing carp show now. There's all sorts going on there, huge variety of brands showing their bits and pieces and doing rig demos and bait demos and all of that. Believe like Corda have got a massive space there, so all their top guys will also be in attendance. So, you know, this is your chance to be able to get face to face with some of the best anglers in the game. Put your questions to them, you know, anything that you want to ask them, you can. There's going to be slideshows, there's going to be casting lessons, you know, for free. And yeah, basically, all in all, it's a great weekend out and super cheap as well. It's like £3 if you buy your tickets in advance and 15 quid on the door, so make sure you get them in advance. Aside from that, obviously, I just want to say a massive thank you once more to everyone who supports this show each month. For those who are unaware, I do rely on contributions to keep it on YouTube. I don't monetize it through YouTube, so there's no adverts on there, because every time I watch something on YouTube and adverts pop up, it just drives me nuts, to be honest. So yeah, I've left them out, and yeah, hopefully you enjoy the show enough to keep contributing and keep supporting it. PayPal address is thecarpangle@gmail.com, or the link below this video in the info will take you straight to the page, and you don't even need a PayPal account for that. You can do it just with your card, and it's really easy to set up a recurring payment should you wish to. Right, once again, hope you had a great new year. Sit back and chill out. I'll see you next month.